The stars stretched endlessly across the void, their light cold and distant in the darkness of space. Commander Vex Ithara stood on the bridge of the stellar dawn, watching the swirling colors of distant nebulae paint the viewport in soft blues and purples. The Zephyrian Collective had been exploring this region of space for 3 cycles now, mapping new systems and cataloging resources for future expansion. Vex Ithara's scaled hands moved gracefully across the control panel, her long fingers dancing over holographic displays that showed star charts and sensor readings. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, their civilization spanning thousands of years. They had achieved faster-than-light travel when most species were still learning to make fire. They were explorers, diplomats, and scholars. War was something they had left behind long ago. "Commander," called Science Officer Keftal from his station, "we are detecting an unusual energy signature in Sector 779. Vex Ithara turned toward him, her large black eyes reflecting the bridge lights. "What kind of energy signature?" Keftal manipulated his controls, bringing up a 3-dimensional display in the center of the bridge. Red lines pulsed across the hologram, showing the path of the mysterious energy. "It is unlike anything in our databases. The power output suggests a large vessel, but the energy pattern is strange." "Strange how?" Vex Ithara moved closer to examine the display. "The energy is not coming from fusion reactors or antimatter engines like our ships use. It is something different, something we have never seen before." Around the bridge, other crew members looked up from their stations. The Zephyrians were curious by nature, and the discovery of something truly unknown was exciting. In all their centuries of space travel, they had encountered dozens of alien species. Most were less advanced than the Zephyrians. Some were roughly equal in technology. None had ever surprised them. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" asked Navigator Yethvar, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of Zephyrian speech. Keftal shook his head, his gill slits fluttering slightly. "Negative. The energy pattern is too regular, too controlled. This is definitely artificial." Vex Ithara studied the readings carefully. As a commander in the collective fleet, she had seen many things. Ancient ruins of dead civilizations, strange creatures on distant worlds, and even a few hostile species that had attacked Zephyrian scouts. But this felt different somehow. The energy signature was not just unknown, it was wrong, as if it did not belong in their understanding of how the universe worked. "How far away is the source?" she asked. "Approximately 4 light hours from our current position," Keftal replied. Vex Ithara made her decision quickly. "Set course for the energy source. Reduce speed to half impulse as we approach. I want full sensor sweeps every few minutes." The stellar dawn changed direction smoothly, its advanced engines barely making a sound. The ship was beautiful, like most Zephyrian vessels. Its hull curved gracefully, covered in a smooth metal that reflected starlight like water. Elegant fins extended from the sides, and the entire design spoke of a people who valued beauty as much as function. As they traveled toward the mysterious energy source, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. The Zephyrians were a peaceful people, but they were not foolish. Their ships carried defensive systems, though they had rarely needed to use them. Most conflicts in the galaxy were resolved through diplomacy and trade agreements. "Commander," Keftal called after an hour of travel, "I am getting more detailed readings now. The energy source is definitely a ship, but—" He paused, looking confused. "But what? The size readings make no sense. According to our sensors, this vessel is enormous, much larger than any ship we have ever encountered." Vex Ithara frowned. The largest ships in the galaxy belonged to the Zephyrian Collective, massive vessels designed to carry entire colonies to new worlds. But even those ships were built for transport, not warfare. "How large exactly?" Keftal worked at his controls for several minutes before answering. "If these readings are correct, the vessel is at least 8 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers wide." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Such a ship would be massive beyond anything they had imagined. It would require enormous amounts of energy just to move, let alone to power weapons or life support systems. That cannot be right, said Navigator HFY. No species could build something that large. The materials alone would be impossible to gather. But as they drew closer, their sensors confirmed the readings. The unknown vessel was indeed massive, drifting silently through space, like a metal mountain. As the stellar dawn approached, more details became visible on their screens. The ship was dark, almost black, its hull appearing to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where Zephyrian vessels were smooth and curved, this ship was angular and brutal. Its surface was covered in what looked like armor plating, scarred and marked by impacts. Strange protrusions jutted from various points along the hull, their purpose unclear. "It looks like it has been in battles," whispered Communications Officer Zal Lin. Vex Thara had to agree. The vessel appeared to be built for war in a way that made her uncomfortable. The Zephyrians had encountered militaristic species before, but this was different. This ship did not just carry weapons. It looked like it was a weapon. "Are you detecting any life signs?" she asked. Keftal worked at his sensors for several minutes. "The hull is very thick and appears to be made of materials that block our scans. But I am detecting some energy patterns that might indicate life. Support systems are active." "So there might be someone alive on that ship?" "Possibly. Or it could be automated systems." Vexithara studied the image of the dark vessel on their main screen. Something about it made her feel uneasy, though she could not explain why. Perhaps it was the way it seemed to swallow light, or the obvious signs of battle damage on its hull. Or perhaps it was simply because it was so different from anything she had ever seen. "Open all communication channels," she ordered. "Broadcast standard first contact protocols on all frequencies." Zal Lin worked at her station, sending out the mathematical sequences and peace symbols that the galaxy used for first contact situations. They waited for several minutes, but there was no response. "Try again," Vexithara said. "Include our identification codes and a request for peaceful dialogue." Again they broadcast their messages. Again there was no response from the dark ship. "Commander," said Keftal, "I am detecting some changes in the vessel's energy patterns. Something is happening over there." On the main screen, the unknown ship remained as dark and silent as before, but their sensors showed energy moving through its hull like blood through veins. Systems that had been dormant were coming online. "They know we are here," Vexthera said quietly. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of their ship's systems. In all their centuries of exploration, the Zephyrians had always been the most advanced species in any first contact situation. They had always been the ones with superior technology and knowledge. But looking at this massive, scarred vessel, drifting through space like a sleeping giant, Vexthera wondered if this time might be different. The dark ship continued to power up its systems, and the Zephyrians watched and waited, not knowing that they were about to encounter something that would change their understanding of the universe forever. Commander Vexithara watched the dark vessel with growing concern as more systems came online throughout its massive hull. The energy readings were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases, pulsing through the ship in patterns that seemed almost organic. It reminded her of watching a sleeping creature slowly wake up. "Continue broadcasting peace signals," she ordered. "Include mathematical sequences and star charts showing our home system. Make it clear we come in friendship." Communications. Officer Zal Lin worked diligently at her station, sending message after message toward the silent ship. The standard protocols called for patience in first contact situations. Some species took time to decode alien transmissions, and others were naturally cautious when meeting strangers. But this felt different. The ship's energy patterns suggested advanced technology, far more sophisticated than anything a primitive civilization could create. If these beings were advanced enough to build such a massive vessel, they should have been able to understand basic mathematical concepts and peaceful intentions. "Still no response, Commander," Zal Lin reported after another hour of attempts. "I have tried every frequency and communication method in our databases." Science Officer Keftal looked up from his sensors. Commander, I am detecting something. Interesting. The vessel's hull appears to be covered in some kind of reactive armor. The material actually changes its molecular structure when exposed to different energy types. What does that mean? Asked Navigator Yethvar. It means this. Ship is designed to adapt to different weapons. If you fire a laser at it, the armor becomes resistant to lasers. If you use particle beams, it adapts to those as well. Keftal's voice carried a note of amazement. The technology is incredible. We have nothing like this. Vexithara felt a chill run through her scaled skin. The Zephyrians had encountered defensive technologies before, but nothing that could adapt in real time to different threats. Such technology suggested a species that had fought many different enemies and learned to defend against all of them. What kind of species would need such defenses? She wondered aloud. A species that has been at war for a very long time, replied Tactical Officer Rendal grimly. He was one of the few Zephyrians who still studied military history, and his knowledge of ancient conflicts sometimes proved useful in understanding aggressive species. The hours passed slowly as the Zephyrian crew continued their attempts at communication. They broadcast everything they could think of: mathematical concepts, scientific principles, cultural exchanges, even music from their homeworld. The dark ship received all of their transmissions but gave no response. Commander, Keftal called. I am detecting movement within the vessel. Whatever is aboard that ship, they are definitely active. Life signs? Still difficult to determine. The hull is blocking most of our deep scans, but energy patterns suggest thousands of individual sources moving throughout the ship. Thousands. Vexithara tried to imagine a vessel carrying thousands of beings. The Stellar Dawn had a crew of only 200, and it was considered a large ship by Zephyrian standards. What kind of civilization could field a single vessel with thousands of crew members? Try a different approach, she ordered. Send a simple binary message. Just ones and zeros in a mathematical pattern. Even the most primitive species should be able to understand that. Zal Lin nodded and began transmitting the new message. The binary code pulsed out from their ship in regular patterns, repeating mathematical concepts that any technological species would recognize. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, every sensor on the Zephyrian bridge lit up at once. Commander, Keftal shouted. The vessel is scanning us. The scanning beam was unlike anything Vexithara had ever experienced. It did not just examine their ship's hull or energy patterns. It penetrated deep into their vessel, analyzing their technology, their weapons systems, even their biological signatures. The scan was so detailed and thorough that it felt invasive, almost aggressive. They are examining our computer systems, reported Zal Lin, alarm clear in her voice. The scan is trying to access our databases. Raise shields and cut all external data connections, Vexithara ordered quickly. But even as their defenses activated, she could tell that the scanning beam was far more advanced than their shields. It was like trying to stop a flood with a paper barrier. The scan continued for several more minutes, examining every aspect of their ship and crew before finally ending. Then came the silence. The dark vessel's energy patterns shifted again, and Vexithara could see new systems coming online throughout its hull. Weapon ports that had appeared to be simple hull markings began to open, revealing the dark mouths of unknown weapons. Defensive arrays extended from hidden compartments. The ship was preparing for something. Commander, Keftal said quietly, I think they know everything about us now. The implications were terrifying. The scanning beam had been so advanced that it had cut through their best defenses like they were made of paper. If these beings could examine Zephyrian technology so easily, what else could they do? Continue transmitting peace signals, Vexithara ordered, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. But even as Zal Lin continued broadcasting, Vexithara found herself studying the dark vessel with new eyes. She had initially thought of it as a ship, but looking at it now, she realized that was wrong. This was not just a vessel. It was a fortress. Every line of its hull spoke of warfare, every surface was designed for battle. This was a ship built by a species that understood violence in ways the peaceful Zephyrians never could. The weapon ports continued to open, revealing glimpses of massive weapon systems hidden within the hull. Energy readings spiked as targeting systems came online. The dark ship was not just awake now, it was ready for war. "Commander," whispered Navigator Yethvar, "maybe we should withdraw to a safe distance." Vexathara considered the suggestion. It would be the wise thing to do. Their ship was small compared to the massive vessel before them, and they were clearly outmatched in technology. But the Zephyrians were explorers first, and always. They had encountered dangerous situations before, and resolved them through patience and diplomacy. "Not yet," she decided. "We maintain our position and continue trying to communicate. This species may simply be cautious. We must show them that we pose no threat." But even as she spoke the words, Vexathara could not shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. The dark ship continued to power up its weapon systems, and with each passing moment, it became more clear that they were not dealing with a cautious species. They were dealing with predators. The scanning beam had told these beings everything they needed to know about Zephyrian technology and capabilities. The weapon systems coming online could probably destroy the stellar dawn with ease, and still there had been no communication, no acknowledgement of their peaceful intentions. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice tight with worry. "Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they are powering up over there, it is beyond anything we have ever encountered." Vexathara stared at the dark vessel on their main screen. Somewhere inside that massive hull, thousands of alien beings were preparing for something, and, for the first time in her long career, she wondered if the Zephyrians might have finally encountered something they could not handle through diplomacy and peaceful contact. The dark ship hung in space like a storm cloud, silent and menacing, waiting for something, and the Zephyrians could only wait with it, hoping that their peaceful intentions would eventually be understood by a species that seemed to speak only the language of war. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Commander Vexathara stood on the bridge of the stellar dawn, watching the dark vessel as more and more of its systems came online. The weapon ports were fully open now, revealing massive gun barrels that could probably destroy a small moon. Energy readings continued to climb beyond anything in their databases. Then, without warning, every speaker on the Zephyrian bridge crackled to life. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw to a distance of 50,000 kilometers. This is your only warning." The voice that came through their communication system was unlike anything Vexathara had ever heard. It was speaking perfect Zephyrian, with no accent or hesitation, as if the speaker had been born on their homeworld. But the tone was completely wrong. There was no emotion in the words, no warmth or curiosity that typically marked first contact situations. It was cold, clinical, and absolutely certain. The bridge crew stared at each other in shock. After hours of trying to establish communication, the alien ship had finally responded. But instead of answering their peaceful overtures, it had given them a threat. "How do they know our language so perfectly?" whispered Communications Officer Zal Lin. Science Officer Keftal looked pale, his gill slits fluttering rapidly. "The scanning beam. They did not just examine our technology, they downloaded our databases, including our language files." The implications hit Vexathara like a physical blow. These beings had not spent time learning Zephyrian through patient study. They had simply stolen the knowledge from their computers. In minutes, the level of technology required for such an act was staggering. 20 seconds, the emotionless voice announced. Vexathara made a quick decision. "We are peaceful explorers," she broadcast back. "We mean no harm. We only wish to establish diplomatic contact and exchange knowledge." There was no response to her words. The countdown continued in her head as she watched the dark vessel. Its weapon systems were fully powered now, energy readings that made their own defensive capabilities seem like toys by comparison. "Commander," urged Navigator Yethvar, "we should withdraw. This species is clearly hostile." But Vexathara hesitated. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on the principle that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and communication. They had never encountered a species that could not eventually be reasoned with. Perhaps these beings were simply being cautious, testing their intentions. "We will not withdraw," she announced, both to her crew and to the alien vessel. "We are a peaceful exploration ship. We pose no threat to you or your people." The 30 seconds passed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dark ship began to change. Running lights that had been completely dark suddenly blazed to life along the massive hull. The illumination revealed the true scale of the vessel for the first time, and every Zephyrian on the bridge drew in a sharp breath. The ship was not just large, it was enormous beyond comprehension. Their own vessel, which they had thought was a respectable size, looked like a small shuttle next to this monster. The hull stretched on and on, covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to stop asteroid impacts. Massive weapon turrets rotated slowly, their gun barrels longer than the entire length of the stellar dawn. Sensor arrays and communication dishes emerged from hidden compartments, creating a forest of technology along the ship's spine. But it was the design that truly frightened Vexthera. Every line of the vessel spoke of violence. Every surface was built for war. This was not a ship that had been converted for military use. It had been designed from the beginning as an instrument of destruction. "By the ancient stars," breathed Tactical Officer Rendal. "That is not a ship. That is a mobile weapons platform." The massive vessel began to turn, its engines producing energy readings that defied understanding. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a great predator deciding whether its prey was worth the effort of killing. More systems came online throughout the hull. Point defense turrets emerged from dozens of locations, their targeting lasers already tracking the small Zephyrian ship. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths, revealing glimpses of the weapons waiting within. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice tight with fear, "I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout their weapon systems. If they fire, our shields will not even slow their weapons down." Vexthera felt a chill run through her body. In all her years of exploration, she had never encountered a situation like this. The Zephyrians were used to being the advanced species in any first contact. They were the ones with superior technology, the ones who offered help and guidance to less developed civilizations. But this ship made their technology look primitive by comparison. The energy readings alone suggested power generation capabilities far beyond anything the Zephyrians had achieved. And the weapons were designed to fight wars on a scale that peaceful species like hers could not even imagine. "They gave us a warning," she realized aloud. "They could have destroyed us without saying a word, but they gave us a chance to leave." "A warning we ignored," added Yethvar grimly. The dark ship continued its slow turn, and Vexthera could see more details of its construction. The armor plating was scarred and marked by impacts from weapons she could not identify. This vessel had seen battle, real combat against enemies that could actually damage it. How many wars had this ship fought? How many enemies had it destroyed? "Commander," Zalilin called, "I am receiving another transmission." The same emotionless voice filled the bridge again. "Your language patterns indicate you are the Zephyrian Collective. Your databases show no records of warfare in the past 800 years. You are explorers and diplomats, not soldiers." The clinical analysis of their entire civilization in just a few sentences was more frightening than any threat could have been. These beings had not just stolen their language, they had learned everything about Zephyrian society in the few minutes their scanning beam had been active. The voice continued, "You do not understand the situation you have entered. Withdraw now or we will be forced to treat you as a potential threat." "We are not a threat," Vexthera broadcast desperately. "We are peaceful. We have no weapons that could harm a ship like yours." "That is irrelevant," came the reply. "You ignored a direct order to withdraw. In our experience, species that ignore warnings often ignore other instructions as well." The massive ship completed its turn and was now facing them directly. Every weapon system was trained on their small vessel. Energy readings climbed even higher as targeting systems locked onto the stellar dawn. For the first time in 800 years of peace, a Zephyrian crew faced the real possibility of death by violence. Their shields would not protect them. Their speed would not save them. Their diplomatic skills were useless against beings who communicated through ultimatums and threats. "Commander," whispered Rendal, "request permission to charge weapons and raise combat shields." Vexithara almost laughed at the suggestion. Their weapons were designed for asteroid mining and defending against space pirates with primitive technology. Against this monster they would be like throwing stones at a mountain. But she gave the order anyway. If they were going to die, they would at least die as Zephyrians, with dignity and courage. The Stellar Dawn's defensive systems came online, though everyone on the bridge knew they were useless. Their small weapons powered up, more for symbolic purposes than any real hope of survival. The dark ship registered their defensive preparations immediately. More weapon systems swiveled to track them and energy readings spiked again. "Fascinating," the emotionless voice said. "You are preparing to fight despite being completely outmatched. Your databases indicated your species abandoned warfare centuries ago, yet you still retain the instinct to resist when cornered." There was a pause, as if the beings on the dark ship were discussing something among themselves. "You show courage," the voice continued. "That is unexpected." Vexithara held her breath, waiting for the final attack that would vaporize her, ship and crew. But instead something else happened. The massive vessel's weapon systems began to power down. Commander Vexithara watched in confusion as the massive alien vessel's weapons began to power down. The energy readings dropped from lethal levels to merely threatening ones. The targeting lasers that had been locked onto the Stellar Dawn switched off, though the weapon systems remained ready. "What are they doing?" whispered Navigator Yethvar. Before anyone could answer, the emotionless voice returned. "You will observe. Do not move. Do not transmit. Do not activate any systems beyond life support." The tone brooked no argument. Whatever these beings planned to show them, resistance would likely result in their immediate destruction. Vexithara nodded to her crew, and the Zephyrian ship went silent except for the minimal systems needed to keep them alive. "What are they going to show us?" Communications Officer Zal Lin asked quietly. Science Officer Keftal was studying his sensors intently. "Unknown, but energy patterns throughout their ship are shifting again. They are powering up different systems now." The dark vessel began to move, its massive bulk turning with surprising grace. As it rotated, Vexithara could see more details of its construction. The armor plating was incredibly thick, designed to withstand impacts that would shatter planets. Strange markings covered the hull, some that looked like battle damage and others that might have been decorative or symbolic. "Look at those impact craters," Tactical Officer Rendal said softly. "Some of those marks are enormous. What kind of weapons could cause damage like that?" Before anyone could speculate, their sensors detected movement in the space around them. Small objects, barely visible to their instruments, were drifting through the area, micrometeorites and space debris, the kind of tiny particles that existed everywhere in space. The alien ship's point defense system suddenly came to life. What happened next took place so quickly that Vexithara's eyes could barely follow it. Dozens of small turrets emerged from the dark ship's hull, each no larger than a Zephyrian escape pod. These weapons tracked the micrometeorites with impossible precision, following particles too small for most sensors to detect. Then they fired. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from the point defense systems, each beam striking a different particle of space debris. The tiny meteorites simply vanished, vaporized so completely that not even atoms remained. The targeting was perfect. Every shot hit its mark. Every particle was destroyed. But it was the speed that made Vexithara's blood turn cold. The weapons had tracked and destroyed hundreds of targets in less than a second. The reaction time, the precision, the raw computational power required for such an achievement was beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever imagined. "How is that possible?" Keftal breathed, staring at his sensor readings in disbelief. The display was not over. The alien ship's larger weapon systems began to extend from their housings, revealing gun barrels that dwarfed anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. These were not point defense weapons. These were ship killers designed to destroy vessels much larger than the stellar dawn. One of the massive turrets rotated smoothly, its targeting systems scanning the space around them. In the distance, perhaps 1,000,000 kilometers away, floated a small asteroid, no larger than a Zephyrian city. The turret locked onto this distant target and fired. The weapon made no sound in the vacuum of space, but Vexithara could see the energy discharge on her screens. A single projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance to the asteroid in seconds. The asteroid ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no gradual collapse. One moment the rocky body was there, a solid mass that had probably existed for billions of years. The next moment, there was nothing but a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated plasma. "By the ancient gods," whispered Yethvar. They vaporized, an entire asteroid with one shot. Keftal was working frantically at his sensor station, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The energy output of that single weapon was equivalent to our ship's entire power grid, running at maximum capacity for a full year. The implications were staggering. This single alien vessel carried weapons that could destroy fleets, level cities, or crack open moons. And they had just demonstrated this power with casual ease, as if destroying asteroids was something they did for practice. But the demonstration was not finished. The massive ship began to accelerate, its engines producing energy readings that made their previous displays seem small by comparison. The vessel moved with impossible grace for something so large, turning and maneuvering as if it weighed nothing at all. As it moved, more weapon systems revealed themselves. Missile tubes opened along the hull, revealing glimpses of warheads that could probably destroy entire star systems. Energy weapon arrays extended from hidden compartments, each one larger than the Stellar Dawn's main engines. Shield generators hummed to life, creating defensive barriers that would make their own shields seem like tissue paper. "This is not just a warship," Rendell said in amazement. "This is an entire fleet contained within a single hull." The alien vessel continued its demonstration, showing off systems and capabilities that defied every law of physics the Zephyrians thought they understood. Faster than light communications arrays, sensors that could apparently see through solid matter, and manufacturing facilities that seemed to be producing new weapons even as they watched. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice shaking. "I am detecting something impossible. This ship appears to be manufacturing antimatter in real time. The energy containment systems alone would require more power than our entire civilization produces." Vexithara felt dizzy as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. The Zephyrians had always prided themselves on their advanced technology. They could travel between stars, communicate across vast distances, and build cities that floated in space. But compared to this alien vessel, their greatest achievements looked like primitive tools made by children. The demonstration reached its climax as the massive ship deployed what appeared to be a scanning array, larger than most space stations. The array activated, and suddenly every star system within 100 light-years appeared on their screens in perfect detail. "They just scanned 100 star systems simultaneously," Keftal reported in disbelief. "The computational power required for such an achievement, it is beyond calculation." The scanning array retracted, and the alien ship's systems began to power down to their previous levels. The demonstration was over, but its message was crystal clear. This single vessel possessed technology that could dominate entire sectors of space. Their weapons could destroy worlds, their defenses could withstand any attack, and their sensors could track every ship in a dozen star systems at once. The emotionless voice returned to their communication system. "You have observed a standard defensive demonstration. These capabilities represent approximately 1% of this vessel's total combat potential." 1%. Vexithara felt her legs give way, and she had to grab onto her command chair for support. If what they had just seen represented only 1% of the ship's capabilities, then this single vessel could probably conquer the entire Zephyrian collective without significant effort. "We understand," she managed to say into the communications system. "We understand that you are far more advanced than we are." "No," came the reply. "You do not understand. You cannot understand. Your species has known peace for 8 centuries. You have forgotten what war truly means. You build ships for exploration and trade. We build ships to survive." There was a pause, and when the voice continued, it seemed almost sad. "We did not choose to become what we are. But the universe gave us no other option." Vexithara wanted to ask what they meant, wanted to understand what had forced these beings to develop such terrifying capabilities. But before she could speak, the alien ship's systems began to change again. New energy patterns emerged throughout the massive hull, and Vexithara realized with growing horror that the demonstration was not over. They were about to see what this species considered a real show of force. The massive alien vessel hung motionless in space for several long minutes after its devastating demonstration. Commander Vexithara and her crew waited in tense silence, afraid to move or speak. The casual destruction of an entire asteroid with a single shot had shown them exactly how outmatched they were, but the emotionless voice had promised that this was only 1% of the ship's true capabilities. What could these beings possibly show them that would be worse than what they had already seen? The answer came as new systems began to activate throughout the dark hull, but instead of weapons or sensors, these appeared to be communication arrays of unprecedented size and power. Energy patterns flowed through the ship's structure like rivers of light, converging on massive transmission dishes that emerged from hidden compartments. "What are they doing now?" whispered Navigator Yethvar. Science Officer Keftal studied his readings with growing amazement. They appear to be preparing for a massive communication burst. The power levels are enormous, enough to send a signal across the entire galaxy. Before Vexithara could respond, a new voice filled their bridge. Unlike the emotionless tone they had heard before, this voice was warm, female, and carried an accent that seemed somehow familiar despite belonging to an alien species. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Retribution. I apologize for my crew's rather direct approach to first contact, but we have learned to be cautious when encountering unknown vessels in deep space." The voice paused, and Vexithara could hear what sounded like background conversations, as if the captain was discussing something with her officers. "Your scanning technology is impressive," Captain Chen continued, "and your databases indicate that you are indeed a peaceful species. The Zephyrian Collective has maintained peace for over 8 centuries, which is unusual in our experience." "Captain Chen," Vexithara managed to say, "we are honored to make contact with your species. We came seeking peaceful dialogue and cultural exchange." A sound that might have been laughter came through the communication system. "Peaceful dialogue. Yes, I can see from your records that your people value such things. That is refreshing." The massive ship began to turn again, and as it moved, more details of its construction became visible. Vexithara could see now that the hull was covered not just with armor and weapons, but with names and symbols. Thousands upon thousands of markings covered every available surface, as if this single vessel carried the history of an entire civilization. "You are wondering about our ship," Captain Chen said, apparently noticing their scans. "The Retribution is what we call a deep space exploration and defense vessel. She has been my home for 12 years now, and before that she served other captains for almost a century." A century. The implications made Vexithara feel dizzy. This single ship had been in service longer than most Zephyrian vessels existed before being replaced with newer models. "Your technology," Keftal said hesitantly, "it is far beyond anything we have achieved. Your weapons, your defenses, your scanning capabilities are necessary for survival," Captain Chen replied, and her voice carried a weight of experience that made the Zephyrian crew fall silent. "You see, the galaxy is not the peaceful place your people believe it to be. There are species out there that view other civilizations as nothing more than resources to be harvested, worlds to be conquered, beings to be enslaved." The communication arrays continued to power up, and Vexithara realized that whatever message Captain Chen was preparing to send, it would reach far beyond their small encounter. "We humans learned long ago that hoping for peace is not enough," the captain continued. "You must be prepared to defend peace, to fight for it when necessary. Your species has been fortunate to develop in a quiet sector of space, away from the ear, predators and conquerors. Are there many such species? Vexithera asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. More than you would believe. The Korth hegemony, who view all other life as inferior and fit only for slavery. The Void Seekers, who consume entire star systems to power their war machines. The collective of Echoes, who strip the minds from living beings and use them as organic computers. Each name sent chills through the Zephyrian crew. These were not abstract threats from ancient history. Captain Chen spoke of them as current active dangers. But you do not need to fear them, the human captain said, and there was something in her voice that might have been a smile. Not anymore. The communication arrays reached full power, and suddenly the space around the Retribution lit up with dozens of transmission beams. Each beam shot out in a different direction, carrying signals to distant points throughout the galaxy. What are you broadcasting? Vexithera asked. Star charts, Captain Chen replied calmly. Very detailed star charts showing the current positions of 17 other human vessels currently operating in this galaxy. Vexithera's blood turned to ice. 17 other ships like yours? Oh, they are not all like the Retribution, the captain said, and now there was definitely amusement in her voice. Some are larger. The sensor displays on the Zephyrian bridge suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships that had been completely invisible to their instruments moments before were now broadcasting their positions. 17 points of light scattered throughout known space, each one representing a vessel of unknown but presumably devastating capability. How long have you been here? Yethvar asked in a whisper. Humanity has been exploring this galaxy for 37 years, Captain Chen replied. We arrived to find it largely at peace, which surprised us. Our own galaxy was quite different, much more violent, much more dangerous. We had to learn to be strong just to survive. The implications hit Vexithera like a physical blow. These humans were not native to their galaxy at all. They were visitors, explorers from another galaxy entirely. And they had been watching, learning, mapping everything for over 3 decades without anyone knowing they were there. Why reveal yourselves now? She asked. Because things are about to change, Captain Chen said, and her voice grew serious again. Our long-range sensors have detected movement in the dark sectors. Species that have been quiet for millennia are beginning to stir. Old empires are rebuilding their fleets. The peace your galaxy has enjoyed may not last much longer. The transmission arrays began to retract as the communication burst ended. Whatever message the humans had sent was now spreading across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, reaching destinations the Zephyrians could not even imagine. We prefer peace, Captain Chen continued. Despite our capabilities, despite our weapons and defenses, we would rather explore than fight. But we have learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to make war too costly for aggressors to consider. The massive ship began to turn away from the Zephyrian vessel, its engines building power for departure. Wait, Vexithera called out. Will we see you again? Can our people establish formal diplomatic relations? Perhaps, the human captain replied. But first, your collective will need to decide what kind of civilization you want to be. The galaxy is changing, Commander Vexithera. Your people can continue to explore and study and build beautiful things. But you may also need to learn to defend those things. The Retribution's engines reached full power, creating energy readings that dwarfed everything they had seen before. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive vessel as it prepared to enter faster-than-light travel. One final piece of advice, Captain Chen said, her voice already beginning to fade as the ship prepared to jump. The 17 ships you can see on your sensors are not the only human vessels in this galaxy. They are simply the ones we have chosen to reveal. Remember that and share it with any species that might be thinking of causing trouble. The ship engaged its faster-than-light drive, and the Retribution simply vanished from existence, leaving behind only a faint distortion in space-time and the lingering echoes of its massive energy signature. The Zephyrian bridge fell completely silent. For several long minutes no one spoke or moved. They simply stared at the empty space where the most powerful vessel any of them had ever seen had hung moments before. Finally, Communications Officer Zhao Lin broke the silence. "Commander, what do we tell the collective?" Vexathara looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had left their home system as explorers, expecting to catalog new star systems and maybe make contact with a primitive species. Instead, they had encountered beings whose technology made their own civilization look like children playing with toys. But more than that, they had learned that their peaceful galaxy was not as safe as they had believed. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, predator species were stirring. Ancient empires were rebuilding, and the only thing standing between the peaceful civilizations and chaos was a fleet of human ships that preferred to remain hidden. "We tell them the truth," Vexthara said finally. "We tell them that the galaxy has changed, and that we are no longer alone. We tell them about the humans and their ships." She looked at the sensor display, where 17 points of light still showed the positions of the revealed human vessels. As she watched, one by one, the signals faded as the ships returned to whatever stealth technology kept them hidden from Galactic